So good morning, everybody. Dr. Raghavan, Chairman, and ED, and Dr. Sudha, Director Training, my colleagues, former colleagues in the rubber board, and also, of course, my friends in plantation sector, particularly from in the small grower sector, northeastern region, and friends from other walks of life. Well, as you see the topic, I thought it was, I have to give an overview of the rubber sector itself, not confined to the plantation sector, but doesn't matter. I shall skip that. Now, the background, as Dr. Rahman mentioned, I think he has briefed very clearly in very short period what things have to be done, what are being done, and also I think there may be some duplication. But at the same time, I'll try to elaborate. Maybe I deviate from the slides a bit once in a while, and I'll try to minimize my, the treatise of the rubber part because rubber board is the. Can you hear me? All fine, no? Hello.
Yes, sir. It's fine.
It's fine. No?
Yeah.
So I'll try to explanation of the rubber sector and particularly the statistics and all. And the statistics has been taken from the rubber board itself, so there is no dispute. So the background is the post-COVID situation. I mean, it's what was the brief. As Dr. Rakhan mentioned, there are two situations. When people come back from outside, the people who have been working outside the country, and also people within the country, migration, reverse migration, which are confronted the country at the moment, and the growth has already been mentioned, how the economy is growing. Now, putting this in the rubber context, the topic, of course, is scope for entrepreneurship. I'll try to explain, my thought process are. Some may be unconventional because we have to think unconventionally, at least to begin with. Somewhere we have to start moving away from the beaten path, because otherwise we will continue to discuss the same things when the price falls, because when the price increases, generally the plantation sector is in a different mode. So this is the best time to, probably discuss and, identify action plans which can be implemented on a long-term basis. So two issues of short-term and long-term. Let me run through the statistics. I think you all know, so I won't spend much time. If there's a language difficulty, if you have to speak in Malayalam, I can speak. Bengali, I'm not that conversant now because I have not been using it for long, but Hindi I can. So you can raise your hands or tell the moderator to shift the language. Now, of course, the rubber part, there are two types of rubber, natural, synthetic. I don't go much into that. Of course, our hevia, the rubber tree which we grow here, major source of rubber in the country. And you have we have 50,000 products which can be made out of rubber. You have the latex-based goods and also the dry rubber-based goods. Of course, I already mentioned 60-70% is utilized by the tire sector, but there are other 50,000 products. That's the potential. Now, this is briefly the rubber value chain, the rubber plantations, then to the raw material dealers. Here, when you say raw material dealers, these are the latex suppliers, these are the couplum suppliers, or this, we call it as the field coagulum suppliers. Then it goes to the processing factories, to rubber dealers for direct marketing, and then to the consumers. Okay. The profile of Indian rubber sector, 87,000 crore turnover, and we have 1.3 million small holdings. I mean, that's the main thing. ബാക്കി എല്ലാവരും ഇതിനകത്ത് സൈഡിലുണ്ട്, സ്ലൈഡ് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ കിട്ടും. അതായത് 87,000 കോടി ടേൺ ഓവർ ഉള്ള ഒരു സെക്ടറാണ് ഇന്ത്യൻ റബ്ബർ സെക്ടർ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഈ 2018-19 കമ്പയർ ചെയ്യുമ്പം, താങ്ക്സ് ടു ദ റബ്ബർ ബോർഡ് ചെയ്ത കുറേ നല്ല കാര്യങ്ങളുടെ ഫലമായിട്ട് താഴോട്ട് പോയ പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ വീണ്ടും കൂട്ടിക്കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നു. 9.4% ഗ്രോത്ത് ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ നമ്മുടെ കൺസംഷനും കുറച്ച് കുറഞ്ഞു. അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു റീസൺ കോവിഡാണ് ഒരളവ് വരെ. കോവിഡിന് മുമ്പ് തന്നെ പ്രശ്നം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു ഒരു ഗ്ലോബൽ ഇക്കോണമിയുടെ. What I am trying to say is the production has increased, but consumption has come down a bit. And but the import continues to be unabated. It's a huge level. Clearly, almost 50% of the country's requirement is by import. See, we were once striving to achieve self-sufficiency in natural rubber. That was a time when we thought we could meet the entire demand of the domestic market. But now, of course, I do agree that there are problems, but the potential exists. We will discuss, but this is not the forum for that. Now, this is how the rubber cultivation is spread in the country. അതായത് ഇന്ത്യയിലെ മറ്റ് രാജ്യങ്ങളിലും മറ്റ് സംസ്ഥാനങ്ങളിലും കേരളത്തിലുള്ള ഏരിയ ആണ് കാണിച്ചിരിക്കുന്നത്. അതിനകത്ത് ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ ഓഫ്കോഴ്സ് നമ്മുടെ ട്രഡീഷണൽ ഏരിയ 70%, നോർത്ത് ഈസ്റ്റ് മാത്രം 23%, 15% പ്രൊഡക്ഷനും ഉണ്ട്. അതായത് ആ ഏരിയ ഇപ്പോൾ സെക്കൻഡ് ലാർജസ്റ്റ് ഏരിയ ആണ്. ഇപ്പം റബ്ബർ വിലയുടെ പ്രശ്നത്തിലെ ആഭ്യന്തരമായിട്ടൊരു പ്രശ്നം ഇതാണ്. ഇപ്പം മന്ത്ലി പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ ഇങ്ങനെയാണ് പോകുന്നത്. അതായത് സെപ്റ്റംബർ, ഒക്ടോബർ, നവംബർ, ഡിസംബർ, ജനുവരി മാസം പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ വളരെ, അതേസമയം കൺസ്യൂമർ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രി what I was telling is the previous slides, the weekly production, the monthly production, it varies. It's about roughly 60% of the production, 70% of the production comes from 4 to 5 months, whereas the industry needs the consumption on almost on equal quantity every month. So there is mismatch, there is a gap at times when there is a shortage of rubber, and then that was one of the reasons for imports earlier. But of course now the situation is different. Now, this is an area which we have to address in the long run, but see the NR production, 68.4% sheets, 17% TSR, whereas the consumption is, even in the country, is 45% sheet and 45% is TSR. That means technically specified rubber, but you call it as block rubber. So there's a need to address this. Short term we can say all things, but ultimately this has to be addressed if the rubber sector has to be sustainable. Maybe it may take some more years. You may have some lead time. But keep this in mind, the policies, long-term policies should be to have a balancing between the sheet and the TSR. And we cannot say because we are small growers, we will produce sheet. In fact, globally, all are small holdings. 90% of the production is from the small holdings, like Indonesia, like Thailand, even Malaysia, and they all produce TSR. So some way we have to make a shift towards that, and maybe we will not require the 45% there, but some kind of balancing would be required. I'm sorry because it's the iPad issue. I think some juggling. End consumption, see tubes again, basically auto tires and tubes, 71%. Now the import, here again you have the import in 2019, 83% of the import has been TSR, technically specified rubber, block rubber, right? So this I think this corroborates the earlier view. And country India, of course, we mentioned 6. This is how it is. We are only having 6.4% the global. We are roughly about, I think, 7 or 8% total production in the world. And now coming to the COVID impacts. The COVID, as we mentioned, people will be coming back. People have lost job. NRIs will be coming back. Some on voluntary retirement. Some on whatever, say, retrenchment or whatever is it, but some with money, some without money. So how COVID is going to impact the global economy? Particularly in the context of rubber, this is true. It affects production, it causes supply chain disruption, financial impact on firms and financial markets. അതായത് COVID-19 വന്നുകൊണ്ടുള്ള ഗ്ലോബൽ എക്കോണമിയിലുള്ള ഒരു ചേഞ്ചസ് ആണ്. ഇത് പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ അതായത് റബ്ബറിൽ മാത്രമല്ല, എല്ലാ പ്രൊഡക്ഷനും, എല്ലാ സപ്ലൈ ചെയിനും ഡിസ്റപ്ഷൻ, ഫൈനാൻഷ്യൽ മാർക്കറ്റ്, സ്റ്റോക്ക് മാർക്കറ്റിന്റെ കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ you have been hearing, it's all will be hit. So there is a problem. Now, how the world economic outlook also, see, for 2020-21 compared to other years, is slightly negative. It's not that we are going to be very comfortable in the years to come in terms of pickup. അതായത് റബ്ബർ ഞാൻ പറയാൻ പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് കാരണം റബ്ബറിന്റെ, now let me come back to that later. Now the geographical structure of world in our consumption, as you said, 40% is by China. So, and 57% is accounted for by just China, EU and US. So where something happens there, obviously it is going to have a ripple effect on the entire sector as a whole, globally. But China is coming out, that's a good sign, but other regions are yet to come out of the pandemic, impact of pandemic. അതായത് ഈ പറഞ്ഞതിൻ്റെ പ്രധാനം ചൈന, അമേരിക്ക ആൻഡ് യൂറോപ്യൻ യൂണിയൻ, ഈ മൂന്ന് ഒരു യൂറോപ്യൻ റീജിയൻ ആസ് എ റീജിയൻ, രണ്ട് സ്റ്റേറ്റ്സ്, അവരാണ് 57% ഗ്ലോബൽ കൺസംഷൻ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നത്, നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബർ. അപ്പോൾ അവിടെ എന്ത് പ്രശ്നം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിലും that will affect us. So there has been a growth, but there is improvement. China is coming out. Europe also has started coming out. So it may take some time. So the prospects of നമ്മൾ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ, coming back to that point, quality of ഒരു കാര്യം ആലോചിക്കുക, ഈ നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബറിന്റെ എല്ലായ്പ്പോഴും നമ്മൾ പറയുന്നത്, the importance of natural rubber is that the specific quality of natural rubber cannot be replaced by synthetic rubber. Yes, theoretically it can. Polyisoprene to a great extent, but then it is far too expensive. It might be at least 10 times costlier than this. One is that. So natural rubber will be required and it moves the wheels of industry. It's not like some of the other consumable items. Even if you have to tide over the pandemic situation also, you need rubber because you need transportation. You need essential services to go. And trains cannot go everywhere, particularly in less developed and underdeveloped countries. So you need rubber in any case. And the next statistics, per capita consumption in India is just 1.14 kg against 3.12 world average. Even world average is 3.12, and countries like Japan, they have got about 11 or 13 kgs. So that's the potential India holds. Then area for expansion limited globally, and more so in India, and we don't have that kind of area for expansion in India, and much of our expansion will happen only in the non-traditional region in the northeast. So any further decline in production can deplete the stock further. We have a stock of, as I understand from the figures, about 3 lakh tons. It can be depleted in no time. So that will lead to huge imports. See, when you import, what happens is a potential for a domestic farmer is being shifted to as an opportunity to a farmer outside the country, maybe in Indonesia, maybe in Thailand. They are benefited. They are actually making use of the Indian market when we have potential to raise. So these are all prospects, actually widening demand supply gap in the long term. All projections, maybe these projections now may have to be revisited in the context of current situation. But nevertheless, still there will be a shortage. So this was the projection given by the rubber board some time ago. This is production would reach about 1.3 million tons by 2025. I'm not sure about that. And the consumption 1.5 million tons, and the consumption balance will increase to even 500,000 tons. That will continue. I think even before that, production consumption balance has increased now, even before this, even as we speak. This is again, this is showing the widening gap between the production and consumption. But the potential again, I mean, why I say the market will not crash or will not go down below a point is, see, the new planting area has been coming down globally. This is a global sort of thing. So what does it mean? That means you have still, you can't just enhance production in leaps and bounds as we thought once it may be done. So the land is available maybe some bit in Africa and some of the Latin American countries, but those are not easy regions to expand rubber. Now coming to price, before I go into the topic of today's prospects of NR, price, of course, NR, as you know, I have been in the sector for now almost 4 decades, 30 years in the board itself, and after that I have been watching that. See, NR price movement is cyclical. When the price goes down, there is always desperation and neglect of plantations and the sort of all kinds of activities do happen. But then when the price improves, you overfeed the trees, and then when the price goes down, the overfed and overplanted area will come into tapping. So this is quite cyclical. It gets corrected. So NR price dependent on production, not on consumption, as opposed to synthetic rubber. Because because it cannot be switched off and on like the production of synthetic rubber. So it's actually the production which decides the price, not the consumption. So I would say short to medium term, not very encouraging, but the price of 135, 140 when compared to the other crops is good. But I know when we had touched 250, it's only 50% or thereabout, may not be very good. But long term, it's quite encouraging as a man involved in the sector for 4 decades and who has been closely studying this. Now, I think this is where I think probably we may have to spend some time. Future thrust areas to support the sector. Policies to catalyze private investment in research and development. Now, one thing I will make it very clear before we move further. You can see the government policies. Government policies are shifting away from investing in such activities, the routine activities, subsidizing and promoting commodities. And they are shifting investment elsewhere in infrastructure as enabling factors to trigger growth. So there are areas where you need to attract private investment, and which as what has happened. Not this is not theoretical. This has already happened in other countries, and we are considering ourselves as a transition economy, and we cannot just go back to the 1940s and 50s or even 60s mode to get funded. This is a reality which you are seeing now. I mean, blunt. I'm not See, I'm not going against anybody, but at the same time, this is a reality. So what do we do? The policies by the board or by the government or any agency for that matter has to be to catalyze private investment. The research and development, for example, it was thought to be entirely government, but that is not the case in other countries, in other crops. It's done by, a lot of private investment goes into the research. Maybe it could be development of new clones, it could be new products, it could be climate compliant, change compliant technologies. For example, now you have issues of diseases of polytotricum being reported with not sure cure mechanism, and that too involved in heavy use of pesticides and things like that. So when you see the problem with agriculture research, or for that matter, any research is when you solve one problem, you jump into another problem. You have to solve that too. And let us be very realistic in our assessment. It is huge mechanization, robotization, I would say, in the long term, if in plantations have to survive in Kerala, because labor is not available, and whatever is available is pretty expensive. It's very costly. It's 2 to 3 times the factor cost here. So unless we resort to mechanization, and in what areas, I mean, this is something which we have to discuss and decide, but it has to be promoted at any cost. Now, the R&D has to go in. It's not that we have to have a separate R&D for mechanization. You adopt, customize, and deploy. Now, bridge the productivity gap, foster community-led digital or virtual extension. Now, here again, I think we have, we have plantations which were yielding 3.5 tons in small holdings, which I know. I personally have visited, personally have seen, we have collected that too, not 1 or 2. But we have actually plantations about 20% below 1 ton. So the group which is going to be badly hit is the below 1 ton group. So when there is a potential, this is clearly a technology gap. This is clearly a gap in adoption of technology. And we cannot have the rubber board field officer as we used to have earlier. Even earlier, we had only a very wide ratio, 1:3,000, when other crops had 1:800. But still, we managed through RPSs and also elite growers. To a great extent, we managed. But then now, even that is not available. So it's high time we think about a community-led digital and virtual extension system, and where the boards, the senior experienced people have to play a different role as master trainers or service providers, or facilitating service provision. Of course, the processing and marketing also needs a lot of investment. So in R&D, the forms of rubber has to change. One is the type of rubber, and second is the system itself, how to have aggregation, how to address this issue in the Kerala context. Now, a little bit on the decentralized product-specific manufacturing clusters for Kerala. In the context of Kerala, my assessment, and even for Northeast for that matter, particularly states like Tripura, landlocked states, latex-based industries only will survive, because if you have to bring in 70% of the raw material from outside and you have to industry, and if your market lies again outside, it makes no sense. I think there's a separate session on latex-based industry, so I won't dwell into much. But here, in this context, we need clusters. We need clusters as industrial, so product-specific manufacturing clusters. So that should be the way forward. And finally, converting smallholding as enterprises. Each farm has to be treated as an enterprise. I'll come to that later when we talk about interventions. And of course, you need capacity development of stakeholders. These are the areas where policy support is required. I'll just show one slide. This is just to show, this is not for rubber. This is for a general crop production scenario. Where do your incremental production come from? Your land, you are shrinking land is becoming unproductive. But farming practices and breeding technology, employing biotechnology, can bring in about 130% increase in future production. I think this is where the investment has to go, this is where the thrust has to be. And if you look at the stakeholder mapping, now you see the enterprise. See, when I show enterprise density, here, this is actually to show, the next slide we'll see. What do the other stakeholders do? We can see the bulk of the investment, bulk of the activity has been with the government. Very little with the private sector, very little with the farmer organizations and cooperatives. This has to change. At least the second box has to be much more much more the private sector, which is for which there is scope. Now, I think the topic of the day was actually the entrepreneurship. What are the areas, how to develop entrepreneurship in the plantation sector and related sectors. Just a couple of definitions. I am not going to theoretical much, but I see the last one as Peter Drucker's. One who searches for change, explores opportunities, and converts a source into a resource. This is what an entrepreneur is. So, do we want to be, an entrepreneur, or we just want to be a passenger? That's the issue. Now, your father has been farming, so I will also farm the same way. I won't do much, or do I have to change? So you need, everyone has an entrepreneurial skill in you, and that has to be rekindled. Now you should have something new, you should have a quest for something new, and you should be able to convert a source into a resource. A source from in the sense from a lower productivity area, you have to shift it to a higher productivity area. Why do we need an entrepreneurial approach? This is regarding the factories, and this is regarding the initiatives. Small factories, all initially taken up at many levels, did not go through fast. Even Kerala, we have a lot of experience on small scale industry units. Say, for example, gloves manufacturing. You have rubber band units. All ran into problems with Chinese import, we say. But then, what has been the real issue? That entrepreneurial approach was missing to a great extent. Now, let me talk about the ownership. This is my personal experience. If someone takes up something very individually, he invests money, he invests his time and energy, obviously you can expect the success to be 100% or near about that. But the moment, that's the distinction between these three identities: the individual, the private sector, and the public sector led institutions. When you say individual, the ownership is complete. But even if it is a private sector, if it is an institutional format, you must have heard about the recent collapse of NBFC, including one which I was also associated. Why? Because if it is a family-oriented business, you will go out of the way to protect your brand image. You will try to support the way it should be, to see that nothing happens to that and it flourishes. Whereas if it is an institution, the employees, even including the senior management, the approach is the mindset is that of an employee-employer relationship. The other is owner relationship. So what is required is an entrepreneurial approach. If anything, we start here. So this is actually the primary, the basis on which we should be moving forward. And your thrust should be on value for money and showing success. Now, let me just briefly, avenues for investment. I won't say entrepreneurship. I would rather say I have classified it into 4 areas. One, of course, is farm. Under farm, you are plantation related and post harvest. I think in Malayalam, നാല് ഏരിയ ആയിട്ടാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇൻവെസ്റ്റ്മെന്റിന്, അതായത് ഇവിടുത്തെ NRIs വരുന്നവരും ഇവിടെ പ്ലാന്റേഷൻ സെക്ടറിൽ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നവരും കുറച്ച് പൈസ ഉള്ളവർ, പൈസ ഇല്ലാത്തവർക്ക്, ഇവർക്കൊക്കെ വേണ്ടി എന്ത് ചെയ്യാം എന്നുള്ളതിനെ പറ്റിയുള്ള ഒരു അസസ്മെന്റ് ആണ് നെക്സ്റ്റ് 15 മിനിറ്റ്. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞ് ഡിസ്കഷന് കുറച്ച് സമയം, ഐ തിങ്ക് വി ക്യാൻ സ്പെൻഡ് സം ടൈം ഓൺ ദ ഡിസ്കഷൻ ഓൾസോ ഇഫ് ടൈം പെർമിറ്റ്സ്. അപ്പോൾ ഫാമിനകത്ത് under the farm, so these are the 4 areas where I thought we should concentrate. Plantation related, including post harvest. Dr. Raghavan, chairman, പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞു കുറേ ഏരിയാസും കുറേ ഇതൊക്കെ പലതും റബ്ബർ ബോർഡ് ചെയ്ത് തുടങ്ങിയതാണ്. Now, what is required to scale up is you need a model, one. And you need hand-holding from a different angle. One success there, of course, it's good as, demonstration or some kind of thing. But if that has to be institutionalized, how it can be taken forward, how it becomes a movement, is where I think we have to create models, foolproof models, business models. But in 4 areas, one is plantation related, one is primary processing, one is marketing, one is other activities, ancillary activities. I'll come to that each. I shall explain each one of these in the coming slides, 5-6 slides. Second is non-farm. If you target farmer, the plantation related alone will not ensure economic viability of the plantations. Or on a holding basis, not the plantations, on a holding basis. So you need non-farm activities also to support them, but every smallholder may not be able to do this. Only the large guys or people with investment potential, investment deep pocket. I mean, I would say can only probably do areas like step into areas like product manufacturing. Here again, product for rubber, dry rubber and latex, and then the rubber wood. Then after second, the third area is extremely critical: service providers. That's an area, that's an employment area for some youth, and that will be highly beneficial for the sector as a whole. Creating a cadre of service providers, the BDS, the business development service providers, mainly for these RPSs and the small units, and even for digital technology. We still are a long way. Of course, we have mobile phones, we have penetrated a lot. Mobile phone penetration is very, very high. But we haven't used the technology beyond a point for real-time transfer of technology, maybe price to a certain extent, yes. And we need, third-party logistics management, or as we call 3PL or 4PL. What does it mean? Everything need not be done by everybody. You need actually specialized services to go in. So, in other words, if you look at, for example I can say is the Boeing manufacturing facility. That's an example we quote in cluster development. Boeing sources its spare parts from 125 countries. Okay, in the US, it manufactures only 1 or 2 items. It all comes from outside. So similarly, in a factory, everything need not be done by. That's where I think we lose sight of economies of scale and efficiency. So service provider is a big area. I think these are all areas where rubber board probably may have to concentrate on. According to me, of course, you can deliberate and take your decisions. And finally, farmer as an entrepreneur. Treat smallholding as an enterprise. So farm-based, if you come, I think it's a bit, I could not find a better word. I think there may be a better word, but I never wanted an alternate supply chain. What I meant was to augment the current supply chain or supplement the current supply chain. A private community partnership, I won't say public private partnership for the time being, because there the public is coming in a loud manner. And so even though PPP is used in different contexts, it's used differently because here there's a concession involved and that involves a lot of other nuances. But I would rather, for that, which I was dealing with that for the last quite a number of years, but I won't go into that. But here we will deal as a private community partnership. What does it mean? Here, a private entrepreneur who wants to invest some money, who has some surplus money, who is coming back, for example, you take an NRI, who has some money, investable surplus, and he has some asset based on which he can take a loan. Now, through an agreement with one of the, here again, we have an entity, Rubber Board has created about more than 2,500 plus rubber producer societies. You have cooperatives on the other side. And in the state, you have the Kudumbasris and other organizations which are, grassroots level movements. And in the Northeast also, I think similarly, some kind of structuring has been done in the plantation sector. And these are opportunities probably to engage them more efficiently on the one side. And at the same time, you give actually an opportunity for a private sector entrepreneur to invest his time and energy in areas which are critical. So now, through an agreement with one lead RPS, having a GPC, group processing centers, he enters into a contract farming arrangement with the growers. Now, contract farming, I think even though Dr. Raghavan did not use the word contract farming, this is something which is being explored very seriously at the national level in other crops too. Ultimately, we need a contract. I think some places it is already done. For some crops, it is being done already. So, in this case also, a legally tenable agreement between the farmer and the private entrepreneur under the aegis of this RPS, a contract farming arrangement with the growers for supply of latex under a buyback arrangement. You enter into a buyback arrangement, and there are two situations possible. Either you can take over the entire maintenance of the plantation, or even you can have the grower to manage but give the latex, either of these two. But if the PE enters into a management, he can double the productivity or enhance the productivity also substantially. Now the PE enters into a lease agreement with the RPS for leasing out the GPC. There are many GPCs. This was started, the large GPCs were started during my time under the World Bank project. It envisaged something else, but now I think it is getting back to action. That is good. Use this infrastructure which is created gainfully Maybe it may need remodeling. The technology at that time was a bit archaic. We need to probably bring in new technology for efficiency. And more is required to be created. Rather than decentralizing from a completely decentralized processing, you centralize at least at a regional level to have some kind of homogeneity and standards being maintained. And agreement with RPS only, so he need to have this first option one. He need to enter into a lease agreement with the RPS, and you just pay RPS a lease rent because they are unable to run it in any case, so they get a lease rent for the investment they have made. Now, PE also may collect latex from growers and other smaller pieces, and private estates too. He has the option. And the latex can be preserved for supplying to either latex factory directly or convert it to RSS grades. He can target the absentee growers, a large number of them, untapped areas, and small holdings with aged owners who cannot spend much time and unable to get the workers at the right time, and NRIs having plantations, etc. This model, in our parlance, we call it as an asset-light model because the private entity doesn't have to invest much money on capital. So this is roughly the diagrammatic representation of that. You have a latex collection at the center, and then it is converted to either it goes to either GPC or it is converted to it is given as latex, and then market. He can have a direct contractual agreement with the market with any of the suppliers. Anybody who wants a particular type of rubber, he can enter a contract with the manufacturer. He can actually go have online trading or participate in the e-commerce platforms. He can otherwise, even if he had to sell it as raw rubber itself, instead of having the intermediaries, he can sell this to at least the state level, the last point of delivery of the rubber from the state. So contract farming, he is sure about what quantity he is going to get for sure. He can have from other sources source latex, and he can have arrangement with other smaller RPSs also for sourcing latex. And this is how I think I say this is how it can be done. The option 2 is private GPCs, which I think 16 have been established. That's what the chairman told. It's a very good thing. But here again, the private entrepreneurs enters in an agreement with the RPS for supply of latex under a buyback arrangement. So he can have a buyback arrangement. He establishes a GPC. He is at liberty to collect from anybody. It's not anybody confined to RPSs. And same thing happens. But it is easier for him to dedicate this facility under a contract with somebody. For example, I was working on a seed industry. Entire seed industry in the world, they don't create, say, like if you take Monsanto or if you get Syngenta or Pioneer or Bayer, nobody invests a single rupee in processing. But the guys who invest in processing, they dedicate the factory. If, for example, one factory is dedicated to Monsanto, he is only dedicating it to the Monsanto for meeting his requirements. Similarly, here somebody wants that quality rubber, you can dedicate, otherwise no. And now if you want the pre-vulcanized latex or whatever is it, these are all, I think, opportunities. I'm not going to that area, but I think these are opportunities for private persons to come and invest. Even growers or their next generation, anybody can invest in this. Now, capital investment is involved because you have to fund the GPC and the working capital and so on. Now, the third is a very simplistic model, just a supply chain manager for RPS or cooperatives or even private GPCs. When the private GPCs come, if they have to outsource to somebody, as I mentioned about 3PL type, now another group, they are already existing in the system. They are called, we call them as collection agents or private latex and collection centers. But the difference is that is not on an entrepreneurial model, barring a very few centers. They work as employees to somebody. They work for a firm, or either a latex processing manufacturer or a large supplier, but they are not on their own. So here there is an opportunity to have a cadre of private entrepreneurs, legitimate, working with an RPS, on an O&M contract. Now he actually here, even RPS they are not just satisfied with outsourcing or just giving away the GPC on lease rent. If they want to operate, but they don't have the wherewithal to operate, then the O&M contract can be given to this private entrepreneur. That means he takes a maintenance contracts to operationalize the GPZ. He has no investment there. He operates. He doesn't have much working capital requirement also because the latex is provided by the RPS, but he charges a fee. He takes a fee. But at the same time, he can also ensure collection of latex and feed into the RPS system. Now, why I'm telling, even though it may not be very, very, acceptable, but I can say many of the RPSs are saddled with problems like, very few active people on the board of directors. The president is not, due to the age factors and many other factors, and second generation not coming to the picture. So this is the way I think this should be part of the policy, I would say, to rekindle the RPS movement in a different way. It's sort of this again a partnership, public-private partnership, they can say. RPS in turn can have market. So that means if RPS has to take a contract from a company, even rubber board companies or even a manufacturing company, or they have to, even if they have to trade through e-platform, or they need actually an assurance, this much quantity from where, and I need some staying power, 2 months of cycle of working capital. So all put together, if they have to activate this, if you do this, the growers will get involved, and of course they will, it's a reverse kind of transfer also, technology transfer also. They will upgrade their plantations and high productivity. It's a win-win situation. So these are the three options for the alternate supply chain. It's not alternate, I would say it's an augmented supply chain or something. We'll put some other word. Now, non-farm, I think this was not my brief today, but I thought this was as per my earlier conversation, but I'll just quickly mention this. In non-farm area, what I would say is investment in stressed assets. This is a pure PPP framework. There are a large number of factories in public sector, of course in private sector too, which are not working properly or which are running far below capacity utilization. You can take either a long-term O&M contract or go for outright purchase of the shares. Well, this is only applicable to people with money, people who have investment capacity, but the infrastructure is there. You may need to remodel, and you have to sort out other issues too on the liability part. But there are even, service providers available for facilitating such takeover and accelerating the such process. And another point is, even though honey is a farm product, though, I don't know what is the current status of it. This is a byproduct which is not very insignificant in the rubber sector. Now, from the industrial honey which is collected in the country on a commercial basis, rubber is one of the dominant contributor to the rubber honey, but it has never been institutionalized beyond a point. Because of various other issues. I think this needs a relook. Whether it can be a part of the national bee flora and migratory beekeeping, it can get integrated to a migratory beekeeping chain which exists in the country also. Starting from apple, it ends up with the year end, it ends with rubber. Whether something can be done, I don't know, because this sector I'm out for. I don't have touch with the honey sector much. In the rubber sector, please try that. Where there's an option, because these are all avenues to create more job opportunities and ultimately income to the farmer. And again, non-farm manufacturing, greenfield initiatives to be promoted under PPP. Oh yeah, here why PPP I'm selling? Actually, PPP is not required, but we need a few latex product manufacturing parks or clusters, and a one product, one park. Like, for example, textiles. If you go to Tirupur, we have got about 100 textile parks in the country. I was involved in that, supervising that rather. So many of the parks are one product type. That means if you get a big order, meeting international standards, the product can be standardized and supplied. If you have small units, the sourcing from small units may not be, may not succeed in that. And as mentioned, particularly in the Kerala context, this is a better way of doing that. Now here, only problem in states like Kerala where land is far too expensive, you need some government support. Provide land and that's all, but the government doesn't get into the management or anything of that sort. It's a purely private sector affair. And so either it can be, and here again, the SEZ model. SEZ is a big thing, but I think on a smaller scale, one private initiative investor leading the park as the promoter and the others are on lease agreement. In that case, you don't have too many controls coming in between. This can be thought of. I think there's a discussion on the latex-based industries. And in Kerala context, only low volume, high value niche products only you must target. Don't think of the routine products. Because at 800 rupees to 1000 rupees a wage per day, you are not going to succeed it. Because the neighboring state 400, 300, 400, 500, that's all. Now, one of the big areas I would say is service providers, the custom hiring centers for latest user-friendly farm machinery. Now, the farm machinery, the mechanized, I think we need to do a lot of homework on this because either globally or country as a whole, there are a lot of innovations. If you just go to the neighboring state, Tamil Nadu, Coimbatore, I happened to visit one of the agri-techs some years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago. Lot of machines for weeding, for spraying, for of course the mini tractors to plowing, designed for small holdings, very small, under 20,000, 15,000 cost, and those were displayed along with the machines from outside. I think this is an area, and every smallholder need not buy. This is an opportunity for somebody to open a custom hiring center for the advanced machinery, not the routine sprayers or spades or something like that. And to the extent possible, that should be mechanization, it should be robotized or it should be automated with minimum human intervention. And of course, the service provider also can take plantation management on a turnkey basis for specified task. This is something connected to the contract farming, but not exactly contract farming, because he doesn't have the ownership of selling anything. He doesn't have the commitment of selling anything. Then human resource bank for skilled and semi-skilled work in partnership with SDGs and Kudumbasri and all. Mainly, I think we should have an aggregator platform. If you don't have one, I think you may have one. You mentioned about labor, but I don't know how it is done. Just like somebody having an app, he should be able to give you an intent. I need so many tappers this day from this day to this day, or some workers of this skill sets from this day to this day. I think this is where the service provider, he can think of doing that, like the Uber, for example, or it's on a big scale, like the other food suppliers. I think we should think of something like that if it is not already thought of. And this also linked to the next point, online services, including doorstep delivery of plantation inputs. If you want something, deliver at your doorstep, or earlier we used to say during our input distribution, government procurement, I'll know here, I think linked to a private sector. If Amazon can give it to, yesterday I got a diary from Delhi. I wanted a diary, place an order with Amazon. I got within a week a diary here. Even a very small 170 rupees diary. If that is the case of online services available, why not we supply everything? Why not have a system? You don't have to do much. You play the role of an aggregator, you create a platform. Now, effluent treatment and handling, that's going to be a major area. That need a separate vertical to handle effluent treatment and handling. You should not have the responsibility. While the responsibility remains with the unit, there should be a system where he can avail a facility to handle this. So many alternatives have been thought of, bulk handling and bulk disposal after treatment. So for that, you have a separate contract for that, service contract for handling that. Some industries are doing it already on a turnkey basis. So they don't have to worry about, the industry doesn't have to worry about. They will have the effluent process to the level and they will dispose it. Something like this has to be thought, at least for the major factories. Now, high-tech farming solutions when I say farm, you don't have to confine to rubber alone. A half-hectare rubber guy cannot get his entire income from rubber. He may have supplementary income. Now, if you want the farming as a solution, you have opportunities like protected agriculture for horticulture crops, for export market, income diversification. I'll give a couple of examples later. Now, and of course, broad basing the service offering to cover all essential needs in service area, even outside plantation activities. This is that handyman concept, which is coming popular in Kerala now. You call somebody, a plumber comes and fixes, you pay for the hour. Otherwise, you have to pay for the day. So such facilities, I think, it's worth. See, rubber off, you cannot be viewed in isolation. While you.
Sir, the slides are not getting changed. Please check, sir.
Can you see that?
Now it's okay. Yes.
No, I was on that point only earlier. Can you hear? I think this is actually, I'll skip this. This is when I said about this is what services can do, this is a bit advanced. These are the innovation labs, for providing. Okay, not for private sector. Even rubber board, the training institute also can have a look at it. Creating virtual kind of classrooms and virtual learning systems through innovation laboratories. Using decisions, yeah, that is actually decision support systems and tools for farmers with smart interfaces. Well, this is actually being done. This is not something new. This is done I have seen this in the US being done. They have, cave technology being used to simulate situations, and farmer can have, come and see and have solutions and go back. This should be actually, such things should be a part of the innovation facility. So this I thought of, these are the small issues, generally the issues confronting the small growers, the poor soil structure to all kinds of things, This is for a general farming situation, may not be, but this is also true to our farmers too, rubber farmers too. Poor soil, poor access to finance, poor access to markets, but poor access, I won't say. We have at least rubber, we should acknowledge the role played by the dealers. We have a ready market. Of course, the price is an issue, but I think it is there. Inadequate information support, lack of knowledge, poor access to farming equipment and new technology, and climate change definitely. Limited irrigation, of course, in non-traditional areas, and small holdings. These are all, I think, issues which farmers. Finally, as an enterprise, the farming system approach, once the World Bank was promoting in our countries in other crops, from a system approach, a system in steady state, output from one and input to the other, and at least creating economic activities that will make the holding not only viable but self-sustainable. What I mean is, here I think this may be a slightly departure from the rubber boards, probably the main objective at the moment, because rationalizing crops, area for crops during replanting. You don't have to, if you have 1 hectare, if the grower is well off with a cropping system, which he gets, say, 3 lakh income per year, with a crop combination, allow him to do that. But ensure that his plantation, half hectare or 0.75 hectares, gets 2 to 3 tons productivity. And this can be followed even in non-traditional region when you follow that. Now, key is net farm income through optimizing productivity. Protect agriculture, for example, hydroponics. You may laugh it off, but it is becoming very popular. In the US market, controlled agriculture market is already crossing $2 billion. Where you supply pesticide. You won't call it organic. You can call it pesticide-free materials. Leafy vegetables, salad vegetables, for export market as well as domestic consumption. Now, this is a distinct opportunity in Kerala, particularly in a high-value, high-cost economy like here, which requires minimal labor and minimal land. And the technologies now, I was working on it for about 2 years, hydroponics and aeroponics. Some of the factors, are becoming favorable now. The cost of, the raw materials like LED lights and all becoming favorable. And you don't have to go to LED lights first. You can have actually simple protected agriculture with these methods. And finally, the BDS, I mentioned earlier, a cadre of BDS, business development service providers, to support even RPS and growers. Whatever has been said, so this is a hydroponics system which is being promoted here also. You get about 30 to 40 times of increase in your productivity. So finally, the way forward, rubber board to take the lead in preparing detailed business plans for each of the activities listed, maybe select most promising ones to begin with. Say, you need business plan for all. These are ideas being sprinkled. It's easy to sprinkle ideas. Now convert it to a business plan, a template to be created, to be shared. And in the incubation center, you should have hand-holding support to these entrepreneurs using in-house expertise as well as domain experts. And you can forge partnerships with reputed organizations and creating a platform to facilitate seamless integration of activities. And this is where I think rubber board role can be mainly in this area. I mean, rather than having the last mile delivery of services, which we are very good at, we were appreciated. That should have been done. Unfortunately, the process does not allow that. So this is a quote, which I saw just yesterday only. This is actually an Army general's quote. The guy did not know it was impossible, so he did it. Okay, thank you. So if you need some time to discuss, I have left another 8-10 minutes we can discuss.
Thank you, sir. For participants, discuss.
Let me try to bring my video off. Hello. Hello.
Hello. Answer
I can hear you. Hello.
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 Hello. Hello.
Yeah, tell me. Yeah, I can hear. Sunil. Who is?
Sir.
Hello. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead. Thank you. Hello.
Kumar sir, Zubair here.
Sir.
May I suggest one thing? When somebody asks question, others can mute. I think there is some overlapping coming. You can raise the hand and maybe better mute ചെയ്താൽ സൗകര്യമായിരിക്കും. ഇപ്പോൾ ഇടയ്ക്കിടയ്ക്ക് കയറി വരുന്നു. സംസാരിച്ചോളൂ, പറഞ്ഞോളൂ, കേൾക്കാം. Who is speaking now?
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Spencer. May I speak? Can you hear me, please? Sir, ഈ സിന്തറ്റിക് റബ്ബറും പിന്നെ സാധാ റബ്ബറും തമ്മിലുള്ള മെയിൻ വ്യത്യാസം എന്താണ്?
അത് ഇന്ന് ഉച്ചയ്ക്ക് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ടെക്നോളജീസ് തന്നെ സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്. സാധാ റബ്ബർ, നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബർ ട്രീ എടുക്കുന്നതാണ്, നമ്മുടെ മരത്തിൽ നിന്ന് എടുക്കുന്നതാണ്. സിന്തറ്റിക് റബ്ബർ പെട്രോളിയം പ്രോഡക്ട്സ് കൊണ്ട് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നതാണ്. അതിപ്പോൾ ഉദാഹരണം ടയർ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രി നോക്കുന്ന SBR, സ്റ്റൈഡീൻ, ബ്യൂട്ടാഡൈൻ, റബ്ബർ, ഇതൊക്കെ പെട്രോളിയം പ്രോഡക്ട്സിൽ നിന്ന് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്ന ഉൽപ്പന്നങ്ങളാണ്. നമ്മളെപ്പോഴും നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബറിനെ ഫേസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് അതുകൊണ്ടാണ്. ഒരളവ്. പിന്നെ പ്രോപ്പർട്ടിയിലും വ്യത്യാസമുണ്ട്. ഈ നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബറിൻ്റെക്കാളിലും ഇപ്പം 11 ടൈം നമ്മൾ പെട്രോളിയം എനർജി കൂടുതൽ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നതാണ് മറ്റേ പെട്രോളിയം പ്രോഡക്റ്റ് ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ. അതായത് ഈ സിന്തറ്റിക് റബ്ബർ ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ അതിൻ്റെ കൂടുതലും പെട്രോളിയം പ്രോഡക്ട്സാണ് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നത്. അതായത് ഒരു നാച്ചുറൽ പ്രോഡക്റ്റ് അല്ലെന്ന് വേണമെങ്കിൽ പറയാം. നാച്ചുറൽ പ്രോഡക്റ്റ് അല്ല. നാച്ചുറൽ പ്രോഡക്റ്റ് ആണെങ്കിൽ നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബർ മരത്തിൽ നിന്ന് എടുക്കുന്ന, അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് നമ്മൾ നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബർ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഇന്ത്യയിൽ കൂടുതൽ കൺസംഷൻ നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബറാണ്.
ഓക്കെ സാർ. അപ്പൊ ഈ ശരിക്കും ഇന്നിപ്പോ മാർക്കറ്റിൽ സിന്തറ്റിക് റബ്ബർ അല്ലേ ശരിക്കും വില കുറച്ച് കിട്ടുന്നത്? ഇപ്പൊ ഒരു ബിസിനസ് ആരംഭിക്കുന്ന ഒരാളെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം സിന്തറ്റിക് റബ്ബർ അല്ലേ കൂടുതൽ വില കുറഞ്ഞു കിട്ടുന്നത്?
ഒന്നാമത് 2 കാര്യങ്ങൾ. ഒന്ന്, എൻ്റെ പ്രോപ്പർട്ടി ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു. എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങളും സിന്തറ്റിക് റബ്ബറോട് ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ ഒക്കില്ല. പിന്നെ രണ്ടാമത്, നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ കിട്ടുന്ന വില കുറഞ്ഞ് കിട്ടുമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ കാര്യം, സാധനം വില കുറച്ച സാധനങ്ങളുമാണ്, ക്വാളിറ്റി മോശമായ സാധനങ്ങളാണ്. ഉദാഹരണം, ഇപ്പോൾ ഈ ചൈനയിൽ നിന്നൊക്കെ ഇമ്പോർട്ട് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരുന്ന നമ്മുടെ കുറേ പോളിയൂറത്തിൻ്റെയും അതല്ലാതെ ഫോമുണ്ട്, പിന്നെ ഈ ചപ്പൽസ് ഉണ്ട്. ഇതൊന്നും ലാസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യത്തുമില്ല. അത് നല്ലതല്ല, അത് ഡിഗ്രഡേഷൻ ഇല്ലാത്ത സാധനമാണ്. പിന്നെ ക്വാളിറ്റി നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബറാണ്. അതായത് എനിക്കൊന്ന് ഉച്ചയ്ക്ക് ടെക്നോളജീസ് സംസാരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്, CBO ഒക്കെ സംസാരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട് ഇതിനകത്ത് തോന്നുന്നു, ആഫ്റ്റർനൂൺ സെഷനോ നാളത്തെ സെഷൻസിൽ. അപ്പോൾ അവരായിരിക്കും ഡീറ്റെയിൽ ആയിട്ട് പറഞ്ഞുതരാം. അവർ പറഞ്ഞുതരും ഇതിനെപ്പറ്റി.
ഒരു കാര്യം, ഈ ലാറ്റക്സ് ശരിക്കും ലാറ്റക്സ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ എന്താ ശരിക്കും? എൻ്റെ ഒരു ബ്രീഫ് ഡെഫിനിഷൻ.
ശരിക്കും ഡെഫിനിഷൻ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇറ്റ്സ് an exudate from the tree in a colloid form and it contains 30% rubber. അതിനകത്ത് വേറെ ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങളുണ്ട്. സാധാരണ ഒരു ആവറേജ് 30 തൊട്ട് 40% വരെ റബ്ബർ കാണും ലാറ്റക്സിൽ, നാച്ചുറൽ റബ്ബർ ലാറ്റക്സിൽ. അത് ബാക്കി പ്രോട്ടീനുണ്ട്, വെള്ളമുണ്ട്, വേറെ ല്യൂട്രോയിഡ് പാർട്ട്, കുറേ സാധനങ്ങളുണ്ടാവും. അപ്പോൾ റബ്ബർ 30% അത് പാല് പോലെ. പാലിനകത്ത് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ പാലിൻ്റെ ഫാറ്റ് കണ്ടന്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ 8% അല്ലേ പറഞ്ഞു. പാല് പോലെ അതും പശുവിൽ നിന്നും മറ്റേ ഇതിൽ കിട്ടുന്ന പോലെ മരത്തിൽ നിന്ന് കിട്ടുന്ന ഇതൊരു കൊളോയിഡ് സസ്പെൻഡഡ് സ്റ്റേജ് ആണ്, അൺസ്റ്റേബിൾ ആണ്. അതൊരു 3-4 മണിക്കൂർ കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അത് പിരിഞ്ഞു പോകുന്ന പോലെ തന്നെ അത് ഉറയും. അപ്പം അതിനു മുമ്പ് അന്നി പ്രിസർവ് ചെയ്യണം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പ്രോസസ്സ് ചെയ്യണം.
അതല്ല, അപ്പൊ ഇത് ശരിക്കും ഷീറ്റാക്കി മാറ്റാത്ത റബ്ബറിനാണ് നമ്മള് ലാറ്റക്സിന് വേണ്ടി
അതന്നെ മരത്തിൽ നിന്ന് വരുന്ന അതിന് ലാറ്റക്സ് ആവും. അപ്പൊ ലാറ്റക്സ് ബേസ്ഡ് ഗുഡ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. ഉദാഹരണം ഇപ്പൊ ഗ്ലൗസ് പറയുകയാണ്, ഗ്ലൗസ് ലാറ്റക്സ് ബേസ്ഡ് ഗുഡ്സ് ആണ്. ഫോം റബ്ബർ ഉണ്ടാക്കാം. അപ്പൊ അതുപോലെ ലാറ്റക്സിനെ ലാറ്റക്സ് ആയിട്ട് ഇരുത്തണമെങ്കിൽ അതിനെ പ്രിസർവ് ചെയ്യണം. അവർ അമോണിയ ഒക്കെ ഒഴിച്ച് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഗ്യാസ് വെച്ചിട്ട് പ്രിസർവ് ചെയ്യും. അതെല്ലാം നേരെ ഷീറ്റ് ആക്കണമെങ്കിൽ ഉടനെ ഷീറ്റ് ആക്കണം.
അതായത് കേടുവരാതെ സൂക്ഷിക്കണം എന്നർത്ഥം.
റൈറ്റ് എക്സാക്ട്.
അപ്പൊ ലാറ്റക്സ് റബ്ബറിൽ നിന്ന് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്ന സാധനങ്ങൾ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ശരിക്കും സാധാരണയായിട്ട് ഗ്ലൗസ് കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഉണ്ട് അല്ലേ?
അതന്നെ
നാളെ എക്സ്ക്ലൂസീവ് ആയിട്ട് അതിനെപ്പറ്റി ക്ലാസ് ഉണ്ട്.
ഓക്കെ മുഷ്കിലേ. ഓക്കെ താങ്ക് യു വെരി മച്ച്.
വെൽക്കം. സുബേർ ഓക്കെ. I can hear you. Go ahead. You are muted. Mute ചെയ്തിരിക്കുകയാണ്.
You can hear me?
I can hear you. Please tell me.
After this class, there will be practical sessions will be available in the rubber board for if I want to start a business.
എന്റെ അറിവ് അത് സുധ ആൻസർ ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്. എങ്കിലും ഞാൻ പറയാം, എന്റെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഞാൻ സുധയ്ക്ക് കൊടുക്കാം. Sorry, I think I'll answer from my side, and actually it should be answered by the director of training, Dr. Sudha. I think they have an incubation center. So where your business ideas will be developed into an implementable business plan. Okay. That will be available, but I don't know all what I have said. This is the first time I am telling from my side. Maybe some of this has already been done, or if there are anything they may pick up from this and they may do. I was more on the sort of giving some ideas which I thought would be relevant.